Time Again, Exposing the Truth. Welcome to Coffee Time Again, Exposing the Truth. Dale at the microphone, the show that demonstrates how history repeats itself. He digs into the past, shows what happens, and how it is happening now. Follow the path of history to where it goes, then relate it to today to reveal the connections. The culture that forgets its history has no future. A history buff and loves to talk about it, going back as far as ancient Greeks and Egyptians and beyond. So grab your coffee, your chair, and listen to the show. Hope you enjoy.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, joins and whoever out there listening to us. Thank you for being here today. My name is Dale. I am the host of Coffee Time Again, Exposing the Truth. Today we're going to expose the truth about podcasters. Ed is a podcaster. I'm a podcaster, so we're going to talk about podcasting and the technical difficulties that we had this morning. And we always seem to have on occasion. So I'm going to let Ed introduce himself to you, and I will jump in with questions. I've got 3 of them that you ask. You put on your bio.
Okay,
So I'm going to be asking them.
good enough.
And so let's get started. Ed, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm Ed Waters. I host the Dead America podcast. The reason I started the Dead America podcast is because I went through an injury that put me down and took everything that I had. Took my health, it did not take my wife. Big plus, thank God. And, I sat there going through a devastating injury, took my ability to do the laborious work that I'm used to, accustomed to, and all of a sudden I have nothing to give back, is what my mind told me. And several years went by, and I started podcasting just to relieve the anger. It turned into being something that saved me and made me identify that, hey, life is what you make, and what you put in will always be what you get out. So podcasting has saved my life in many ways. It's helped my relationship and the growth that I've experienced just by talking with individuals, understanding I'm not alone. That's huge. So here I am today with Dell speaking on coffee time.
You bet. Which I love having you here. I also operate another podcast. I operate 2 of them. And similar to you, when I got started 4 years ago, I had retired from being a drug and alcohol counselor and was bored to tears, nothing to do, sitting in was renting a little room out in a place called Bloomfield, Colorado, and nothing to do. And I
Yeah.
started writing a blog, and then I discovered nobody was reading it. Which of course didn't do much for my self-esteem, let me tell you. So I said, the devil with it. I'm going to force them to listen to it. I'm going to record it.
Well, imposter syndrome, a lot of the times we think nobody's listening, nobody's reading, nobody's paying attention. But it is amazing the amount of people that are listening that you have no clue about.
Mhm.
And it doesn't always show up in your podcast statistics because those analytics, they can be skewed in many ways. So I don't even pay attention to them.
I pay very little attention to them myself, but I
Yeah,
know I'm getting
on
heard.
into it.
I know I'm getting heard because I'm getting responses, getting
Yes.
comments and stuff. So I know I'm being heard. With the blog, it just wasn't going anywhere. So I took all my blog material into podcast, and
Yep.
those were all audio. Then I started doing interviews like I'm doing now, and that's about all I do now. I interview, dealing with this coffee time again deals mostly with history and how it's repeating itself and causing problems in today's world, and how did we handle it back then, and how are we handling it now, and what's the difference? And it's been my experience over the last few years that I've been doing this, there ain't no difference. We're doing the same darn things over and over again, expecting different results, which is the very definition of insanity.
Yes, sir. It sure is. And it seems like we're being pulled into it. And
Mhm.
a lot of people don't recognize the parallels with the past.
No,
And a lot of people they get hyped up, and we're human. We get
that,
pulled into the hive mindset, and that's dangerous. Each of us are individuals. We're unique. We think and we act differently. And a lot of the times people just go by day and they get sucked into this tribal mentality, and
mm,
they forget to express themselves.
yeah,
And truly expressing yourself means to be your individual, yourself. And that's unique in itself.
I totally agree with you. And this group think too is the way George Orwell used to put it.
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
1904.
yeah.
It is here today.
He had a unique way of writing when he wrote 1984. It's quite a book.
Hmm. Yes. And it's way different than the movie, actually.
Absolutely, it is.
So yeah, the difference is immense, really.
It
If
is.
you're into reading,
I am.
highly recommended to go
Read
in
the
deep.
book, don't see the movie.
Yeah.
Or read the book and then see the movie. It's like I'm a fan of
Whoa.
yes, but see the movie after you read the book. I read several fiction books by I thought they were fiction books, and I read them. They're by Glenn Beck,
Hmm.
and there was three of them in a series, and I read all three of them. And then I haven't watched the movies yet, but I'm thinking about it. But the books themselves were about dystopia, what it was like in the future with Ripple still in charge, and how
Oh, really?
yeah, it was a three-book series, and it was incredible. The thing is, at the end of the book, he had a list in his bibliography, and it showed where everything he was talking about was coming true.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing. You know, Glenn Beck is a guy that he came from being an alcoholic, and from the streets of Seattle, basically, and he came out and ended up actually helping change the world in many ways,
Yes.
because a lot of the things that he is involved with, it's needed today. I don't agree with Glenn Beck 100% all the time, but I do enjoy that they bring up those taboo topics, which is so needed in our world.
Mhm.
And he's good at illustrating history himself. I
Yes.
love uh, how they bring up the Constitution, and
Mhm.
this is the document that really makes it legal for us to abide by laws,
Right.
where the Declaration of Independence gives you the right to say, I'm not going to do this,
Right.
or I'm going to. I'm an independent. I have independent thought. Therefore, the Constitution is a place where we come together and we agree upon
Mhm.
the law, the sanctimony of this land. And it's being destroyed today. It's disheartening and sad.
I totally agree with you. The Constitution is being destroyed.
Yes, it is.
First five podcasts I did was on the first 10 amendments to the Constitution and how having to fight to keep them. Every single one of them.
That's right. The Bill of Rights,
Yeah.
it not that it's your only rights. Those rights that are enumerated within the Constitution, they are just those laws that bind our governance to what they are allowed to do. It has no bearing on our own personal only that we agree to these laws.
Right.
And this is important to understand, that your natural right of being a man is vital, and it's lost. Go back to Locke, reading about the natural law and the rights of man. If you're hungry, you're going to eat. So therefore, you know, nowadays we have hunting licenses, fishing licenses, all of these licenses, rules, regulations that are arbitrary to what the Constitution really stands for and the principles. So we get lost and we don't understand. History is our guide, and
Right.
we have to look back. During World War II, my father fought during that war, and when he came home, he brought stacks of photos of concentration camps. And those images were burnt into my mind. And it is disheartening that we are allowing the uncivil discourse in our or in our Congress. When Nancy Pelosi is tearing up a speech in a public form, it is not good.
No.
I don't like Donald Trump a lot of the times because he is an ass at times. But what he did was he brought the ability to say, hey, this isn't right. And I like a lot of what Pence and Trump did together. And what it has turned into is nonsense.
Mhm.
And what our Constitution is valuable, and
Yes.
we have to talk about it. We have to protect it. We have to defend it. It's not your right, it's your duty. And if you're an American, you must speak out against those things that you do not agree with. It
And you
doesn't
have the
matter.
right to do that.
That's right. It doesn't matter if people agree with us or not. I commend everyone that stands up and says they are for this or they are against this,
Yeah.
without the backstabbing and the cheating, the lying, and all of the other disgusting things that come
Done with
involved.
politicians. Yeah. I
Yes.
totally agree with you. I think you're right there. I'm not a Trump supporter. I like what he did when he was president. I don't like what they're doing to him. They're persecuting him. They're not prosecuting him.
Yes.
And that's wrong.
Yes.
I am a Nikki Haley supporter.
Mm.
She's been saying some really good things about the border and about Europe and our troops and Ukraine and Israel. She's been saying some really good things about that. I'm a strong supporter. I've been supporting Israel since I was about 6 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I support Israel.
Yeah.
That
Just
it's imperative that we understand that Israel has been persecuted. It's like the oldest persecution. And, it gets muddled and muddied up a lot of the time when people talk about Israel. But
Mhm.
really, it comes back to your right to decide if you support or you don't support.
Right.
But, I believe it was yesterday that we had the Lincoln Memorial. It was defaced
Mhm.
because of the Gaza support. Supporters of Gaza. Well, how does that make it right to go and defame or deface something that our heritage holds dear and true? Lincoln, you know, he's the emancipator. So if you look at the history behind that, why are you defacing that monument? And
What
and
each monument?
yes, why any monument? The Confederate monuments,
My
I
take is
don't
that.
agree with a lot of this taking down the history. This is wrong because when you don't remember history, you're bound to repeat it. And
That's my
that's what
tagline. That's my tagline. The culture that forgets its history has no future.
that's what you just stated. We're
Yep.
going through this pandemonium of repeating history.
Well, I've
Let's
been saying,
stop the nonsense before we get to World War III.
yeah,
It's
I've been saying for years that we're going to have a civil war in the United States. But
yes,
it's not going to be black and white. It's going to be
yeah,
all. It's
that's a
going to
good
be.
point, Bill.
Yeah, I've been saying it for years that because of the way we are so divisive, and both sides are guilty of this, not just the Democrats, although they're the majority. The Republicans too are divisive. I don't think that in Congress there's not that much difference between the two.
Yeah,
So the ideology is totally different, but their politics, their actual actions, their behaviors are identical. Stealing,
that's
thieving, robbing, lying politicians. I
yeah.
just had a gentleman on my podcast the other day about the Constitution. He's got a new idea for a new Constitution, not a new Constitution, an amendment to the old Constitution. I don't agree with it totally, but it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, well, right now there is a effort within the states to bring about a states convention, a
Right.
convention of states.
I
And
support it.
yes, I do too. I think it's very much needed.
Hmm.
And no, I don't. I think my personal thoughts to this is we need to strip the Constitution back to its original form with the Bill of Rights and let it stand as that broad document, that
Right.
breathing document, that living document that it truly is. And that means that I interpret the Constitution in the way that I see it. And, let's take the Second Amendment, for instance.
Okay.
If you look at this, I have a Constitution
I
here.
have
Let's
one
look.
over my door over there.
So we get the words correct here.
Yeah.
Uh, a well-regulated militia, comma. A lot of the times we forget what a comma is, but it separates the language within the state. All right. Being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed. They're all separate by those statements. Simply read the Constitution in the way it's supposed to be read, and it's clearly being violated heavily.
I
And
have a theory about that. That's last four words. Shall not be infringed. Is the
correct,
crux of the pattern, is the crux of the Second Amendment. And that makes every single solitary gun law in the United States unconstitutional.
I
Yeah,
believe
one.
that
Some of
100%.
them I agree with. Some of the restrictions, like I mean, there's some guy with a mental health issue maybe shouldn't have a gun, but
Yeah,
he doesn't have a gun. He may pick up a knife.
that's the case right here.
You see, there is the
So when we deal with that, we have to deal with the mental health crisis, not the gun crisis. There is not a gun crisis. There's enough guns for everybody here. All right. So there's not a gun crisis, but there is a mental health crisis. And
that's
that
right.
that is just going, back to Reagan when he let everybody out onto the streets.
Thank
You
you.
know,
That's what I was going to say. Goes back
we
to
were
Lincoln.
dealing, yes, we were dealing with this the correct way in a sense. It's the way the regulatory bodies we're dealing with the mental houses, and we have to control what is being done in our society. And that means that you and I, as citizens, we must take an interest. We must be up to date on what is going on to the best of our abilities. Nowadays, that's tough because of all of the opinion news instead of the actual news. So we're really starving for the historical principles in the Constitution that we're
Now,
lacking.
one thing I was going to say is that, I forgot it. Oh my God. My memory is shot. I'm getting so old. The, getting back to the Constitution, our need for it, but what the problem is, as I see it, is not only do we have more departments in the government than we need, I think we need to start disbanding, starting with the TSA, Homeland Security,
Yeah.
not Commerce, Education, HUD, there's just a bunch of them, Washington got along just fine with just 4. We can do that again.
Yeah, it is.
That's
You
what we
bring up
need to do.
a point.
Get rid of a bunch of them. But it's the unelected officials that's causing the problem.
Oh, I
All
love it.
the bureaucrats and the lobbyists is what's causing us the problem in a lot of cases.
Yes. And I wanted to just add to that a little bit. The committees.
Yeah.
We send our elected officials to do a job, and everything is done through committee. Now, it's legal for them to set up committees. That way, they can help them determine what's right. But it's not like that. They allow lobbyists in there, all of these people of, corporate interest into our legalities, our I'm lacking the words. My age is getting up there now too, Dale. But when we are in there making laws, that is up to the Congress. And there's 2 bodies there, the representative and the Senate. So those 2 bodies, they are what should be drawing up laws and passing laws. But the committees are drawing up the laws. And the representatives, or so-called representatives, really, they can't tell you what's in those bills, because I can guarantee they don't read them. And it's a disaster.
It's been proven they don't read them.
Yes. We've watched on television when they are showing votes in the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
Well, you've got other people coming up and pushing their votes for them.
Yeah.
There's no order to this. So there's no true ruling body of lawmakers that are present in our capital. And it's sick.
If you look at those TV commercials, those TV shows, those on C-SPAN, where they're showing the votes and stuff, you'll look at the gallery of where the senators or House are supposed to sit, half or 3/4 are empty.
Yes.
Nobody's there.
Yes. And term limits. We need.
Oh, amen.
I mean, this 80 years in Congress, it's nonsense. We need fresh new blood, fresh new ideas, at least, every 8 years.
Yeah.
And that's enough for people to go and try to make adjustments to our society. And it's not being ran, and it's disgusting how it's being implemented in our world today.
One of my podcasts, I forget which one it is now, I say that they need to have term limits even for the Supreme Court. Although I
Yeah.
believe they need to have a longer term than congressmen or senators. I say 4 terms for the House of Representatives, 2 years apiece, and 1 6-year term for senators.
Yeah, you know, that is one of those things that the Convention of States
Trying to do.
need to address. And that's why it's so important for people to understand what it's about. So, you know, I'm going to recommend that your listeners and anybody that sees this by chance to go and look up what the Convention of States actually consists of.
Yes,
And
conventionofstates.com.
that's right.
I'll put it in my show notes.
Awesome.
The-
Because that
yeah,
is so needed in our world today. And you know, it's going to set so many wrongs right when we actually pass this and we have like a new congressional body
Mhm,
established.
right.
It really needs to happen because what we're stuck in is the left-right paradigm. And like
Right.
you said earlier in our conversation, it's the same thing.
Yep.
There's, you know, who was it? I want to say Bird, but that's not right. Larry Bird was not the man. There was a,
Robert Wood was a senator.
yes, uh, Senator Bird, you know, he was the Ku Klux Klan guy.
One of them.
But yes, one of them. I'm thinking of a guy. I I'm just disheartened that I can't think of his name right
Ready
now.
to come to
But
you.
he come on to television and he was running for his seat and he says, "Well, I'm going to switch parties so I can be reelected." And it's like, well, how does that work actually? You know, so
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name either. I heard the speech.
yeah,
If
yeah,
he be
I
elected
don't.
as a Democrat, I'm going to switch to Republican so I can be
That's
reelected.
right. That's right.
Which tells you one thing. He only cared about one thing:
That's right.
money
And
and power.
yeah, and that's what we've got running America right now is
Right.
corporate and money and power.
Right.
And if you get out of line, they're going to put you in check. I guarantee it. And you know, the fear that the 56 men that signed the Declaration of Independence, think of the fear that they felt,
Hmm.
honor, the sacrifice, and the wealth that they put forward just by signing the
Just by
Declaration.
signing that piece of paper, they put their lives in danger.
That's right. We
They
need
were
that
willing
back.
to do it, and they were willing to do it. Life,
That's right.
liberty,
That's right.
and my sacred honor.
That's right.
That was
We
back
need
in
it
the
back.
day when you could shake a man's hand, shake a man's hand. His word was his bond. And I
That's right.
wish we could go back to that.
Oh, I'm so for that, Dale. We need it so much.
Yeah.
You know, even to go back to the early 70s would be nice. You know, that's a little bit better than today.
Oh,
But
much. It's not just a little. It's a whole lot better. But I
yeah,
went back even to the 50s and 60s.
yeah, I was thinking Herbert Hoover. You know, if we could actually go back before we elected Roosevelt and we
Yes.
could get the people to recognize what Hoover wanted for us to pick up ourselves and pull us through this emergency like every one of us can. That's truly where we started falling off and quickly. So I'd like to see the mindset of, we do need some of the programs, but they're abused, they're misused, and they're misunderstood.
Mhm.
All of them were supposed to be temporary measures.
All laws are temporary.
Yes, exactly. And they were supposed to bring us back to a good footing, and then we were supposed to pick ourselves up and go forward. That
Right.
didn't happen. And they
What
keep on
Roosevelt
going.
was Teddy, not Teddy. He's the one that started the whole mess anyway. It was Teddy. He was the father of the progressive. Him and Woodrow Wilson was quite possibly our absolute worst president ever. Was Woodrow Wilson, even
Federal,
above Biden. Uh, things he did to this poor country. He caused World War I. He caused the United Nations, which I've got a podcast on the United Nations and the abuse there. That's audio only, but it's there. And Franklin Roosevelt really messed things. According to his Secretary of Treasury, his own Secretary of Treasury, he said Roosevelt's economic policies caused a 10-year expansion of the Depression. It lasted 10 years longer than it should have because of Roosevelt's policies. And his own Secretary of Treasury said that.
yeah,
So that tells
it's
you a lot.
yeah. Well, it all comes back to that economy,
Mhm.
establishing trade, and really during that period, the United States, they set themselves up for success, but at the same time, they set themselves up for world domination.
Mhm.
And I think we are muddled in things that we shouldn't be muddled in. And if we
Oh,
go clear back to George Washington,
yeah,
in
he warned
farewell,
us
he warned us. That's right.
about board entanglements.
That's right. And Eisenhower, same thing.
Yeah,
Beware of the military industrial
real
complex.
compliments. Yes.
That's what's ruling us today. The military industrial complex.
You ought to see the mess that that's in. I haven't done a podcast yet, but I've been thinking about it. Just haven't got around to writing one. Right now I am booked on my podcast through the 19th of January.
Congratulations.
I
That's
got a
always good.
lot of work ahead of me. I was going to say that it actually started. This whole mess started with the progressives, and that starting with Woodrow Wilson in 1913. He did a lot of things. I mean, Lincoln tried and failed because the Supreme Court ruled against him to get an education, but an income tax, graduated income tax, which is what we have now.
Right.
Wilson, while governor of New York and governor of New Jersey, started a movement to have an amendment to the Constitution to say we could have a graduated income tax. So when he became president, guess what he did? He gave us
Yeah.
the income tax. Now listen to this. This is what they said. It will never rise above 7%. It will only affect the rich. And it's only temporary. What are we hearing today?
But well, doesn't it actually only affect the poor now?
Yeah, it's a tax. Yeah, it's a tax.
It's kind of
The rich,
reversed.
the rich, there's a lot of loopholes and things like that
Right.
in the tax code. And the tax code is set, the law is that high. And there's so many loopholes in it, and they hire these big fancy lawyers, and they take all the deductions they can find, which is legitimate.
Yep.
I don't know of
Yep.
anybody that take all the deductions they can get.
That's right.
So I
Yeah.
see nothing wrong with that. I see nothing wrong with being wealthy. I see nothing wrong with making money. I do see something wrong with gouging the public like the pharmaceutical companies do. I do see something wrong with it. Monopolies,
That's
which
right.
is where we're going.
That's right.
Get them. 6 companies run the news media.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can tell,
Yeah.
you've probably seen that viral video where all the news people were saying the same thing on every station,
Yeah,
you know, and that's where yourself and I come in.
right.
It's up to us to kind of talk those subjects that need to be talked about, and
Get
it's
the message
important.
out there. That's my goal, is get the message out there on
Right.
history. And like we're talking today about the Constitution and government and stuff. And I think we need a conversation like that. I've even had a couple of liberals on my show
Yeah.
and had civil conversations with them, which is what I
Yeah.
want. Civil, clean conversation.
That's big. When we can come to the table without our personal biases, and we come to listen so we can actually learn, that's when things get better. And that's kind of the meaning behind the Dead America podcast. We aim to discuss anything with anybody,
Yeah.
because every subject is very important. And the three that most people, they want to put their head in the sand. You got religion, you got politics, and what's the third one? Uh, that's my
Yeah.
Alzheimer's again.
Yeah. Alzheimer's disease, as my mother called it. Yeah, we got politics, religion, and
Finances.
finance. That's it. I
People want to talk
um,
about them.
I talk a lot about politics on my podcast because it is so important, and that's where history comes from.
That's right. That's right.
I did a podcast on global warming.
Yeah. Yeah. There, see, and this is where we need to speak, and we need to actually know a little more about history when we speak of it, because of those cycles that we go
You know how far I was able to trace that back?
through. How far, Dell?
2,300 years before Christ.
Really?
Take it
Well,
back to the Greeks, 2,300 years ago, not before Christ. 2,300 years ago, the Greeks were talking about climate change.
yeah. Yeah.
Because
And we can see that there's climate cycles that happen,
right.
where we, with rotation and access and everything that goes on in our cosmic areas, that all dictates what happens to our weather. And climate change, uh, you know I've witnessed snow and freezing weather that is so severe that it's amazing that people could even move through it.
Hmm.
And then in the same area 10 years later, there's nothing, so there's those cycles that happen.
Climate change is the earth is a living, breathing thing,
That's right.
and it's constantly changing and it's rejuvenating itself and it's fighting against what we've done to the planet. We have polluted the planet. We have done a lot to that. We are somewhat responsible for the global warming, the global climate change, but not as much as everybody says we are. I keep reminding him 10,000 years ago what was going on in our, and before that we had that one time they called it goat snowball Earth, because the entire planet, not just a little spot here and a spot there and a spot here with the Neanderthals and stuff, but the entire planet was covered in 6 feet of ice and snow.
That's right.
Entire planet.
Yep. See, and that's historical, where that ice sheet goes up and down, up and
Yeah,
down.
it is.
So, I think that, yeah, we by putting these CFCs in
Yeah.
and ozone depleters, I think that does have some
Automobiles,
effect.
and I think the
I
automobile does.
don't deny that, but just like everything else in our whole universe, including ourselves,
Yeah,
if we cut ourselves, it heals itself.
Yep.
If if we let the water flow through those polluted rivers long enough, it's going to clean itself.
Yes, it
You know,
will.
so it's a healing thing that happens naturally, and we kind of pollute in many ways, and we destruct our world. It all it takes is a little thought sometimes,
Mhm.
and
And
we
we
can
don't
avoid
do
it.
it. We are so, as a species, we're arrogant
That's right.
as a
That's right.
species. And we're gonna get, it's gonna come up and trip us up. Do you know what's gonna happen? There's not gonna be global warming, it's gonna be global cooling, because if you heard of the river oceans,
Yes.
once on the west coast, it's called El Nino and El Nina. That's one of them. There's one along the east coast that flows in and controls the weather from
Yeah. The
I,
currents.
the South Pole up to the North Pole. And it's gonna chill that down. That melting ice is gonna cool that river down, and we're gonna get global cooling.
Yes. Well, it's a percolator.
Mhm.
That's what our oceans do.
Yeah.
Goes to the south, warms up, perks up, and cools in the north,
Yeah,
and it's a constant movement.
yeah, the
You
three
know.
different river oceans. The
Yes.
oceans and the river, I mean, you can get down far enough in the oceans and scuba, and you'll be sucked right along that thing. It moves so fast.
Yes. That's right. And the old sailing vessels used them for navigational purposes, and
Mhm.
that's how we navigated the earth through those
Yeah,
uh, ocean currents.
yep. It's
Very,
just,
very interesting.
yeah, some interesting things that lost knowledge.
Yes. You know, the the most dangerous thing that we can do is pollute our world. And our
I agree.
plastic, the plastic bags, all of this that
Yeah,
end up in the ocean, all of that, we can control that just through mindfulness, and we refuse to do that.
yeah,
So if we put a little bit of mindfulness in it, we can help our world. A lot of the times we don't think how that affects our species that we depend on to live on, like
yeah.
fish and uh,
Bird
wildlife, elk,
and water,
and
yeah. Oh, and all the nonsense that's going on with the butchering of the wildlife in Africa, South America, United States, uh, trophy hunting,
yeah,
which I'm a hunter. Or I was when I was a young man. Uh,
yep,
but what I harvested, I ate,
that's right. That's the key,
except for
right
that one squirrel. Except for that one squirrel. He irritated me, and I shot him with a 30-06.
there. What squirrel?
Squirrel, yeah. Wasn't much of him left to eat. But but what I harvested, I ate. My family and I ate. That's how I fed my family a lot of times in
That's
the
right.
when I was married.
That's right. You know, historically, America, we used to be agrarian,
Yes,
and that's where we fouled up. The ease of life, and you know to know how to produce for yourself,
yeah,
it's vital, because at any moment all of this uh dollar store item stuff that we get from China and throughout the world, that can be gone in an instant. And this is one of the reasons why I liked what Trump did when he did do some things.
yeah,
The trade war that's happening with China, all of this stuff that you wear and it goes bad in 2 months, and then you have to go buy it again.
again. Planned
That's
obsolescence. It's called
Let's learn
planned
to
obsolescence.
fix things. Let's put things back together, reuse.
Why do
I
we need, well,
as a
obviously, neither you nor I need a razor. So we don't need disposable razors.
That's true. But you know, when I was a child, I worked in a fix-it shop.
Hmm.
You know, it's just because I like to go down and hang out. And Mr. Teed, he taught me how to fix things. And,
Yeah.
you know, I would go back and I would fix the toasters, the blenders, you know,
Yeah.
all these old items that were repairable. You don't see that anymore. We
No,
need to
you
get
don't.
back to that. Bring manufacturing back to America. And the big thing, Dale, that I would love to see is do away with corporations. You know, I'm not against capitalists. I think every mom and pop should be able to start their business, run their business, and make as much as they can. But they are responsible for their actions. And the court comes to them and says, hey, mom and pop, you did this wrong. You have to pay for that.
Yeah.
But with our corporations, LLCs, all of these, there's a lot of things that are going awry.
Oh, yeah.
It's not an individual. And those, yes, that's right. Those corporate charters were set up to bring in the power, the railroad, you know, things like this. And again, they went off and started chartering all of these corporations out. And
Yeah.
that,
It started with Andrew Jackson. Started
yeah,
Andrew Jackson. He was another fairly corrupt president. He got rich selling government land on either side of the easement for the railroad. That's how he got rich.
interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, you do. He's got an interesting history of being. He was
Yeah.
a racist too. So was Wilson. But another one that we had that really caused a lot of problems uh, was Johnson and Lyndon Baines.
Yeah.
I don't know if you all
Unfortunately.
remember him and Kennedy, but
Yeah.
Kennedy was not our best president. He never would have been, but he'd have been an adequate one.
Right.
Now, the only
Yeah.
reason he's qualified is because he was shot. But Johnson increased social spending, I think it's 1,000% over Roosevelt. He expanded all of Roosevelt stuff. Medicare, all this.
Yeah.
And the thing that he's got the most notoriety for, he had nothing to do with, and that's the government, that's the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That was all Republicans that did that. Not, it was put on hold when Kennedy was assassinated. It came back in 64.
Yep.
Johnson took credit for it. He had
Yep.
the Democrats had nothing to do with it. That's like the
Yeah.
Klan. It's all Democrats.
Yeah.
It's the Klan.
Yeah. You know, in our world today, what we really truly need to do is open up the CCC again and put all of these young men out, you know, let them learn those trades and let them learn to live together and fix the inner cities.
I preach a lot about not the CCC, which, by the way, the people don't too young to remember what that is. That's the Civilian Conservation Corps from the Depression. But not the CCC so much as everybody ought to spend at least 3 years in the military. Sick,
Yeah.
lame, lazy, you're crazy. Then 3 years in the military. That does a lot of good to people. I know it did me, my time in the Army. And but COVID, the lies and all the nonsense that went on with COVID, those 3 years of COVID, got people lazy.
Yeah.
They don't want to work. They want that $600 a week payment from the government that they were getting, and they're not getting them anymore. So this is where the homeless population's coming from.
Yeah. It's
So I think your idea to see something similar to the CCC or even itself would be a great idea to put all these people to work, because most
Yeah.
of them want to work.
Yeah.
They're not lazy. They want to work. There's a lot of them out there that just, well, I ain't gonna work for less than $50 an hour. flipping burgers at McDonald's? I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, that just blows me away.
That's a McDonald type jobs and fast food type jobs and these entry level jobs for high school students is just that entry level job to teach you how to work, to teach you how to be a team player, to teach you how to get along with people, teach you people skills to deal with the public.
Yeah.
That was the whole reason that they exist, not to make a living.
It's crazy. You know, the and this all goes back to inflation and, you know, trying to tamper down inflation, but actually what you're doing is you're bolstering inflation because you're putting more money there.
Into the economy.
Yes. You know, supply and demand should be what dictates that. And
Yeah,
we both know
leave it alone, it'll straighten itself out pretty
that. Yeah.
quickly, pretty quickly. It's like the
Yeah.
stock market, every 10 years it goes up. Over any 10-year period you pick, at the end of that 10-year period, the stock market's gone up. So leave it
Yeah.
alone. It's doing
Yeah.
just fine, thank you. Yeah, they've had a few hiccups here and there. They're going
Yeah.
to continue to
Yeah.
have hiccups once in a while, but leave it alone. It'll do just fine. Hey, I hate
Well,
to
see
see
this.
you short on minutes.
Okay.
You
I'm so I can talk for hours about this stuff,
So can
Adele.
I. Once I get to yakking, I get to yakking. So we got a couple of minutes. I just wanted to say thank you, Ed. You've been incredible. I'm glad to hear this. It's going to be a couple weeks before I get you published. I've already reached my bandwidth on my host with the two I published yesterday. So it's going to be a couple of
Okay.
weeks. I'll get it edited. I'll put an advertisement for the convention of states for you. Is there any place you want me to send them to?
Deadamerica.website.
Dead America. Dead America what?
Deadamerica.website.
That website.
Yep.
Okay, I'll get that on there too, and the opening credits, both of them have been the opening credits. I might be able to put it right across the top of your head. I know sometimes I can get away with that, sometimes I don't. But anyway, I will get you advertised, I'll get you, and I'm gonna stop the podcasting now, we're just gonna talk for a minute.
Coffee time again, exposing the truth. Welcome to Coffee Time Again, exposing the truth. Dale at the microphone, the show that demonstrates how history repeats itself. He digs into the past, shows what happens, and how it is happening now. Follow the path of history to where it goes, then relate it to today to reveal the connections. The culture that forgets its history has no future. A history buff and loves to talk about it, going back as far as ancient Greeks and Egyptians and beyond. So grab your coffee, your chair, and listen to the show. Hope you enjoy.